I might put in intro music for this one, or are we just starting? Because it's not really an episode, but it's
I think it should start with you saying, "Are you putting intro music on this one?"
maybe. I have considered reading out that Dracula Flow text about smoking Vermissian Kush and all that shit, but I think only Ember is going to recognize the reference because
I was going to say, did I?
yeah, the rest
stroke
of
out
you
for
are
that bit?
too offline.
That
to,
meme is about a year old now as well. So
I was with my straight friends the other day, and they were all saying very demure, very mindful, and I was like, "Oh, it's got to you now. That's cute." And it only took like a month.
Everything starts somewhere.
Right. Well, I guess we are starting, and I guess this is the start. So we are wrapping up our game of Heart, The City Beneath, by Grant Howitt and Christopher Taylor. We've taken pretty major creative liberties with the setting. So if you want to play that game, and you should, it's a great game, and the setting is very good too. But you know, it's not set in this westerny.
I feel like we hit the vibes of Heart.
Yeah, I think we had
Yeah.
the vibes, and I guess as we're shouting names, I want to shout out my friends Mike and Elena who have made the intro music. And,
Jesus, I love the intro music.
and
Yeah, it's so
they just got married.
Did they?
Yeah,
Oh, that's really cute.
So that's lovely. I wish them all the happiness, and I wish that they continue score the TTRPG podcast.
Yeah. Their walking down the aisle music must have been fucking terrifying, though. It must have been like something coming out of the ether. Like,
True. They're both into weird experimental shit. I guess speaking of names, my name is Seema. My pronouns are they and she, and I also had players. Players, introduce yourselves. You are, I suppose, important to the process of TTRPGs, as you know.
I will go first then. So I'm Chris, and I was playing Sam. I am a he by convenience, but not necessarily by identification. That's it. I don't know. I'll explain more later.
I'm Erin. I was playing Mallet, and I use she and her pronouns.
I'm Charlie. I had the pleasure of playing Safina, and I use he, him.
and I'm Ember. She, her. I played Neve.
Okay, now that the pronoun circle is out the way, presumably there's stuff to talk about. So, yeah, I guess I don't know, first thing comes to mind. Before playing, I made you all watch Tarkovsky's Stalker as kind of my pitch for the game. You know, I am Eastern European, so it's less pretentious for me to reference Tarkovsky than it would be for anyone else. They would be a film bro, but this is just my culture. And I just like that script was rewritten multiple times, and every single time they would bring it back to him, he'd be like, no, this Stalker guy, he's too cool. I want him sad and pathetic. Like, why is he doing all these action moves? I want him to just be sad there. And, you know, that was kind of the vibe that I try to bring as well.
Do you reckon we succeeded in that? Did we
Yeah.
make sad, desperate characters?
Frankly, like, this is what surprised me, maybe in a good way. I didn't expect the central conflict and kind of most of the story to follow your personal dramas as much, like with Echo and that whole thing. Like, to me, that was just a pretty simple framing device. You know, this creature that kind of breaks the status quo, that goes through Heart, and in my head, very vaguely, you know, when I had a very vague plan, I thought it was going to be more about you following in its footsteps and kind of seeing how Echo's presence changed those communities and like changed Heart. It ended up being not really about that at all. Like it was very much your personal shit, a mirror to your ugly faces.
Yeah, I can see that. I was going to question Echo though, because I was like, what was Echo's deal? Because I was thinking we were going to get there towards the two last episodes. I thought, right, we're going to have Echo in them a lot. And then we kind of went off on our own thing. And it was only afterwards I was like, oh yeah.
Yeah. Thinking of it, I think Neve was the only person who spoke to Echo. Maybe the only person who met Echo at all.
The only person who met him face to face. Yeah, I had a
Oh.
kind of vision of him, but not like a real one.
I did naturally expect you to eventually speak to Echo. That's why I kind of set up vaguely the idea of talking to Echo at the train when it was like the announcer's voice. And I did, you know, plan of like what this creature would actually speak like.
Did you have a solid thing in mind for if we did meet them, or is it a case of like it was just going to get invented when we came upon them?
I had, like with everything, I had vague ideas that, I would think about more in the moment. But like, I would have bases to improv on. But as the game was actually developing, considering all your endings, if you did also just walk into a room and there's echo and you just talk about, hey, how's it going, metal guy? I feel like it would kind of just be, neither here nor there. It would feel tacked on because that wasn't really the central drama of everything. That would not really be the resolution. It was,
I quite liked how Echo ended up being the vessel through which we kind of explored what our characters wanted the most, almost like Genie style. And that we saw that with Neve I loved that whole thing with Neve and the kind of creating the fake world and it all just expanding out and expanding out.
I was honestly surprised by Neve as a character because I think we had multiple conversations at like between sessions with you, Amber,
Yeah.
trying to find a positive kind of path for her. And you would always go like, yeah, maybe. And then her stuff ended up being like quite dark.
I always kind of wanted her to be the worst. And like not in a evil way, just like
She's just so pathetic and sad.
she
man.
is really pathetic.
What inspired you to play such a pathetic character?
I found a village in the middle of nowhere called Kingshaven and thought, they say a village like raises a child, but what if a village was 9 people and a sheep? What sort of child would that raise?
A deprived one.
A very deprived, pathetic child who just doesn't have a lot of
I
concepts.
feel kind of hurt by this, having grown up on a croft in the middle of Scotland.
You flourished though. You came out and you made up for
I
it.
did love how Neve just really was Aaron, like in so many different ways. Yeah.
Yeah, I also don't appreciate slander. I did not grow up on a farm, but I spent a very significant part of my childhood in a like proper village with, nothing there except village stuff. And it's a good time. But yeah, so that was it. You just hate Scotland.
Sure.
Have we mentioned we're in Glasgow at any point?
I prefer referring to it as the Big G.
Oh, sorry.
I answered what my inspiration was. Where's the rest of yours come from?
Let's do Sophina.
Yeah, I guess reading the Heart rule books, I like to keep bees and I like working on hives and stuff, so seeing a bee themed character instantly kind of was drawn to that. And I guess a lot of it kind of came from, okay, yeah, you've got a girl made of bees. What if she hates it? Like you don't, I really enjoy the kind of like the superhero that has all these powers and stuff. But yeah, what if Spider-Man like just hated spiders? Was terrified of spiders, and like terrified of heights, and like absolutely hated it. And then growing up with that or like exploring that, like what would that do to a person?
Not to immediately derail, but I did have a question specifically for you and for Sophina.
Of course.
So I think very appropriately, Sophina made her dramatic exit at some point, or rather, undramatic in terms of that there was no confrontation. But I think dramatically it made sense for her to kind of struggle with. I know this is a debated issue, but I think Sophina is objectively a bad person. I think she has murdered innocent people that were doing good. That is not a popular opinion at this table, and everyone is looking at daggers at me right now.
Not daggers, just maybe butter knives.
But that's that's just my opinion. But we love an evil girl boss, so I'm not saying that's a bad trait for a character. But I do think that she is bad. But still, her exit made sense. Her return it made even more sense. But as you probably remember, Sophina returns, immediately gets roped into bullshit. And then, which does lead to like a great, scene with Mallet in this, in this arena, like very epic, cool stuff.
Amazing. Yeah.
But what if instead they were just chilling, right? Like they're doing okay. So you come back, you find them, and they're just chilling. Like what is then your, hi guys?
Well, I guess because like we kind of talked about Neve kind of finding everything that they wanted, and we didn't necessarily see the effects of that. I definitely want to know more about how Neve actually dealt with getting everything that they wanted. But I guess Safina got the chance to get what she wanted, which was to go home, and thought she was going to get parades in the street and crown put on her head and all that kind of stuff, and found out that she really wasn't needed and didn't have a place back home. And so her coming back was her reaching this realization that, yeah, the only thing that I have going on for me really is this found family, is Mallet and Mallet's crew, and this group where she actually has a place. So I guess coming back, she would have just wanted to kind of pick up right where she left off, and just blend into it, never talk about it again. Oh no, I definitely didn't choose to abandon you guys at the first actual chance that I got. Like, no, let's just be a happy family again.
Cool, yeah. What about Mallet's inspiration if we're going around the table?
I think Mallet came from, well, we had this sort of like going for this sort of post-apocalyptic dad-daughter dynamic. So it was, obvious one is The Last of Us and Joel from The Last of Us, and whether Mallet finds that kind of like, I don't want to say, like a substitute for his lost daughter from before, and in Safina, and how that relationship goes. But then it's hard, so everything's a little bit dark and twisted. So,
well, The Last of Us ends great, as far as I know. Yeah, everyone's happy in that.
No spoilers for
Yeah,
people.
I've not actually seen it yet.
It is.
I've
If
seen
you
the first
stop
one.
watching, or stop playing.
Yeah, you're just like, that's enough. I'm done.
Yeah.
Everyone's happy. Do you think that Mallet's daughter is dead?
Oh, that's like an open question, isn't it? I think because supposedly she went into the heart, and yeah, he doesn't really know what's happened to her. He's been looking for her. So the idea was that he's like scratching the names of the different locations that he's been to within the heart on his like armor plate to kind of check them off almost. So he knows like, oh, I've been to this town, I've been to Kingshaven, and then she wasn't there, for example. And yeah, so he hasn't found her in however long he's been there, more than 5 years. So I think maybe he had lost a bit of hope about it. But then he kind of found Safina, and they had like a, almost a facsimile, the right word? Facsimile relationship.
Do you think that Mallet crew started with used two and then the others followed? Or like who was the originating members of the Mallet's crew? Probably before it was called the Mallet's crew.
Yeah, it'd be weird if it wasn't Mallet, if it was called the Mallet's
Yeah. Mallet's in last, but just very charismatic.
Got like posters up, okay, right, we've got this delving crew together. We now desperately just need someone called Mallet.
Yeah, I think Mallet found Safina, down in the dirt, as it were, and then they kind of traveled together for a while, and then picked up Sam and Neve.
Yeah, we don't talk about the Expendables that came before, the latest Expendables.
I am curious about this aspect of Mallet searching for someone and having like lost hope a little in it, and seeing Neve, who at the start was also searching for people. What Mallet would have looked on Neve like with pity almost, or because she was hopeful in finding something.
Yeah, I think Mallet. Is pity the right word, or just like a sort of melancholy and a sort of sense of, oh, poor thing, she doesn't realize that. This is the heart, and you don't find what you're looking for in the heart. Although Neve kind of did find it, but she didn't find what she was looking for, really.
She found a facsimile of what she was looking for as well.
And is that enough?
Speaking of your dead daughter, sometimes I would very much intentionally put yous on the spot, and I feel like the biggest spot that anyone has been put in terms of like, because I believe just the previous night me and you chatted, and I asked about, you know, like, what do you think about like, is Malad's daughter still alive or no? And you still didn't have like a conclusive idea about that part of the backstory, which, not that, you know, it's fine, you don't need all the details, but it's just, yeah, specifically you didn't have them even the night prior, and I'm assuming you didn't really expect to need them in the last session.
And I suppose I didn't really answer it just then either. So
yeah, and then just having to
Schrodinger's door.
immediately come up with the last time you saw her and like play that out as a scene.
yeah, that was a curveball.
Yeah, that was stressful.
Not in like a bad way, but like in a, you know, you have to think, oh, how did this happen, and try and do service to the character. Like, this is meant to be the last time they ever met each other, right? So it's gonna have some drama. And like, how do you, and like, how do you fit that drama in a, you know, in a fun way? It was helpful to have. I mean, I had a question about that scene anyway, because so Sam was possessing Mallet's daughter at that point, and so it was sort of between Sam and Mallet, and there was this miscommunication going on. Because why would Mallet assume someone he's never met is inside his daughter?
Ding ding. Yep.
Yeah. So I guess I had the question of like, was that scene actually what happened, or was that just like a figment of the sane asylum?
I was wondering that as well.
Yeah.
I think to me that's one of the more, in my interpretation of what the heart is, why I place the origination of the heart in an insane asylum, is that kind of idea of, not to get like too pretentious and philosophical, but of like, where is the line if somebody's very depressed and they see a world in a specific way? Like, it doesn't have to be hallucinations, or, you know, let's just put something pretty mundane, right? Like, someone's very depressed and everything's kind of dark for them, and they can't do things, or they don't have, you know, like, this is their reality, and it's not unreal. It's also not real, quote unquote, because it's not, you know, quote unquote objectively true that they are the worst, but it's real for them, and therefore, you know, it is real for the person, like, for that context that matters. So I liked imagining the heart as a kind of space like that then turned, you know, took that step further that you can only really take in fiction. Like, annoyingly, you can't really do much fun things with depression in real life. Like, there's just no fun way to dramatically escalate it.
You can do absolutely anything with depression.
But
I like that way of doing it. It's very human. I remember reading like an article by an organ player, and he says the breaths that an organ makes evoke just breathing almost in humans, and that's why we're sort of attracted to it in these senses, this sort of human nature aspect. So introducing more humanity to the heart.
Damn, not to go on a tangent, but I do love some organ. One of my top listened artists is an organ player, and I sometimes wonder if that's normal. But I do love some
apparently
ambient
it is.
organ. Yeah. So it's a beautiful instrument because it doesn't need, you know, it can get on. It can go on forever. It's your. I am not going on a tangent. I'm not going on a tangent about organs. I'm not.
I'm just gonna reference this. If anyone can hear the scratching in the background, we've been trying to cut that out for the past 8 episodes.
You can hear any awkward cut in the podcast that you may hear at any point is not my fault as the editor. It's Gabby's fault.
A lovely sixth member.
A very, very cute Springer Spaniel who is enthusiastic about trying to dig through the floor.
Gabby, that's enough.
What would you say the inspiration was for
Sam?
People can confirm. I routinely call you Sam.
Yeah, you've called me Sam
life.
a couple of times now, which is kind of flattering. It means I really embody the role. Sam was inspired by. I've been going through a year of like reading a lot of trashy historical romance between gays. There's an author called KJ Charles, and she writes all these books about like gay people who've met in like the 17th, 18th, 19th century. And there's one which is a medium in like the 1920s who's a con artist, and he's conning people by making them believe that he can contact the dead. And I had this thought of like, okay, what happens if the con artist finds out actually they can do it for real? And I had like a full backstory written, but it kind of, because it was quite short, it was only like 8 episodes. We only ever kind of like had that in the back as like a kind of a funnel, which was quite nice to kind of have things come through. But I kind of imagined, I was trying to work out with this idea of like a character who's like half dead, half alive, and who gets his power from death. Why wouldn't you just die? So I had to make him afraid. And there's a theme in the Book of Heart which says that like the Grey, which is the place that the Deathwalkers go to kind of get their power and to travel, it like starts to draw the life force out of you, and it's dangerous to stay there for a long time. So I thought, okay, what if that like draws away your personality, and he's afraid of this idea of becoming a nothing, like a nobody. So I thought, okay, he's scared of being a nobody. He's wanting to go somewhere where he can be a somebody. And then like the heart is kind of like the Hollywood for weirdos. And that is like this distant place you've probably heard of, like, oh, all these strange things happen there. But then when you get there, everyone's a weirdo. It's like every barista is like a supermodel. So he's this person trying to not be a nobody, surrounded by all these people who are as weird as he is, and like trying to overcompensate for that. Yeah.
Just to give an example of what my players have to contend to, I remembered sending this into the general chat when I was smoking weed. The Grey is just denial, the unworld, but it's bad because a choice needs to be made. In the millisecond between fight or flight, stretched into the uncaring forever. No one responded to that. I just posted it, and then the next message is like the next day we're discussing schedule or something.
I remember reading it and then being like,
If you those at home, if you can take yourself into, it's like 1 a.m. You're falling asleep. You see your phone light up in the corner. You go to read it, and you get that. There's no way that you can respond to that.
yeah. There was a lot of
That's
stuff
fair.
happening in that chat. Yeah.
That's fair. Coming back to Sam, how do you feel about Sam being the last to survive, and presumably, like, do you think he's still alive? Do you think?
I think he's still alive, yeah. The heart has this mechanic called zenith abilities, and basically it's like your final hurrah, like the final thing you do, and it's meant to be this big thing. And all of the zenith abilities for the Deathwalker, which is what Sam was, are about dying. And I kind of like the idea that he didn't reach his potential. Like he didn't get there. Like he.
I mean, maybe when the potential in question is death, that's not the worst.
True, but I think he would have kind of liked to maybe be a bit of a hero, and like, especially after like Lucy went, I think maybe he was a bit more accepting of the idea of dying. But I think I like the idea of him just like having to continue and just having to kind of get on.
Also, he was afraid of being alone, right?
Yeah,
and
that
he's
only
been left.
he's been left on his own. Yeah, but the part of being alone is also being a nobody, so it's like it all layered in.
It was one of my favorite aspects was Lucy constantly telling you you're a coward, just die.
Yeah, Seema.
I did enjoy playing Lucy. That was a good NPC to play. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of like the Deadwalker, like all of the powers kind of revolve around, I'll just get Lucy to do it. That's fine.
Yeah.
It's not really written in when
when they have more agency than you do. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
I do vaguely remember when you were like, I'm going to be a Deadwalker. I do vaguely remember at some point asking you, oh, do you think it'd be fun if like your death always bullied you? And you were like, non-committally, like, yeah, I guess. And I was like, cool. That's let's go with that then. That sounds. Well, I want to ask yous, I guess, and you can be honest. When I say gimmick, I don't mean necessarily like there's no negative connotation to me with that word. Sometimes gimmicks are good, sometimes gimmicks are bad. It's every gimmicks But I think it would be fair to describe somewhat the whole first episode angel fight, and that the last episode kind of time is a flat circle thing as a little gimmicky. How did you feel about that? Did you see that coming? Did this was one of pretty much the only thing that I kind of had to sit on.
I was wondering how much of that was like thought ahead in a way. Because I remember at the time thinking, like, what's the deal with the angel? And then the angel just died. And I was like, oh, that's the deal with the angel. And then I was like, right, next thing.
Let me tell you, I am not a smart person. So I saw you introduce, oh, cool, an angel. Yeah, this is an interesting idea. Oh, okay, the angel's dead. Yep, move on. I did
thought
not
the
think
angel
about
was
it again.
I thought it was going to come back as like the big bad evil boss at the end or something, because you said that like you could only make them go away, but you couldn't kill them. And so I expected to see it again, but I wasn't expecting the loop. Yeah.
Wow. I remember you describing the dandelion in episode 1 and had my eyes peeled, ears peeled for that coming up again.
Oh, yeah.
And eventually it did, but yeah.
I totally didn't.
It all
register.
sort of clicked as soon as that happened.
I like that it did call back though, because I did, not in a bad way at all, but we had like that first adventure with Prairie, and then it felt like, oh, that was the training wheels, and then we had like our sandbox moment, and they did feel like two separate things. And then when they started to loop back around again, I was like, oh, it wasn't just training wheels, it was like that was part of the yeah, that was cool.
Sure. Well, also in my head, this Prairie's looking for love. Silas is also really just looking for, maybe not in the same very literal sense, but they are basically the same person. I mean, they're not the same person. Prairie's way hotter, but
Oh,
what I
yeah.
mean. Yeah.
Was Silas always going to die at the where he died?
No, that was improv in the moment. And then I thought, should this actually have, well, it's hard. If I need to bring him back, I'll bring him back because, it's fucking hard or whatever. And everything can be weird. But yeah, no, it just kind of felt right. I don't know. I couldn't, it was one of those just, yeah. But no,
I really liked him dying. And well, it's like not as a narrative device. I really like Silas as a character as well, but as a narrative device to just, there goes our job. What are we doing?
Yeah.
Why are we here?
Yeah.
There's not anyone to tell us what to do. We're just doing it because that's what we do.
Yeah, it felt like just another log to throw in the fire as Sofina was leaving. Because I knew that Sofina was leaving, and then one dramatic thing at the end of an episode is good. Two dramatic things is the. But I also kind of I liked. I guess I don't know if this makes any sense, but in my head, it was obviously not really a shocking like, oh my God. I'm like, I don't think anyone, this wasn't a reaction that I was hoping for, and nobody did that. And I kind of like that because that just exemplified more that this was never really about this job. Do you know what I mean? Like it was always about the friends we made along the way, as opposed to like, we need to, this is a quest and we're going after a quest marker.
Yeah.
Like I kind of liked leaving you purposeless in a way to then just see like, will these characters actually go after the quest, quote unquote, still after there is sort of no reason to, because like in my initial vague plan, Echo was gonna, like I said, have a much bigger impact on the world, but that didn't really happen because you decided to
It all went off the rails.
yeah. But that was good going off the rails. I one of the better going off the rails that I think I've ever been part of. I just thought, Ideology Town would be kind of this quirky location, but we'll be done with it in half an hour or whatever. No, it was certainly not that.
I loved the concept of Ideology Town. Like, yeah, such a cool thing and such an interesting thing for everyone to get lost in it as well.
Because you saw it from the outside. You weren't part of that kind of start of that arc. So what was that like?
I think it was it was mental, like just as a player coming back into that and like saying like, I think you can play the whole, oh yeah, tons of stuff has happened since you went. It's another thing entirely when you're then in the middle of like a gladiatorial arena that wasn't there when you left, and like, oh yeah, your dad's now king of this town, and shit's happening.
I never thought about this, but you know, Sofina did have royal parents and everything that were dead, and then Mallet ended up being the emperor,
Yeah, that's true.
or whatever your title was, Lord Cinder.
High
Lord
ideal.
Cinder.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lord's just like that pipsqueak next to a king.
We did start it off. We were like, this is going to be 8 episodes, more or less. Like, this was an arbitrary number. This was never, you know, if it was nowhere near the end, it could have been 10, it could have been 6. But, you know, it was from the outset, like, this will be roughly 8 episodes. So you need to go through your character shit pretty fast, right? You don't have 2 years to do this. And we don't want to do one of those podcasts that is like many, many years, 1 to 20 kind of game. I got ADHD. I don't have the attention span to actually do that. So, to me, this was great, and because it was like compact, but like that kind of, it forced you to be efficient. And so there was no fat. We did definitely, fuck around a little bit on stuff that wasn't as important, but for the most part, there was no fat, and it was just all like stuff that moved either the plot or the characters further. But that's just me sitting here. How about, how did you feel about that format, I guess?
I've never done the whole like 1 to 20 campaign. I think my first game was one of your games, wasn't it, Seema? The when we were doing a bit of Pathfinder, before we moved on to games like Heart and Spire and such. So I can't really speak authoritatively on that, but I quite liked having the kind of defined length. One thing I quite like about these games as well is that they're very explicit about like your character is going to die, and these are the abilities, and like you have those Zenith abilities, don't you? So it kind of gives you ideas for how that character's end might come about, but it also makes you think like, it's not about winning Heart, it's about telling the story with this character, and you think about the arc that the character is going to have. You think about how can you let the character die or like their story come to a conclusion in a satisfying way narratively. And we've had games like not on the pod where our characters died relatively quickly, like within a few episodes, just the way the dice roll and the way the stress and like major fallouts and stuff work. You start accruing a lot of them, and it starts to make sense narratively that your character is like, maybe this is the end for that character. Because
and what I like with it, because you don't have levels, your character can always do the most dangerous thing. There's not like, you're not a level 1 person who can just go into cellars and kill rats. You can go and stop the evil wizard, or you
Giant
can equally
rats. Yeah.
kill giant rats.
The biggest rat.
There's no power scaling to the fancy almost, which is very good. There's no hesitancy with the character you're playing.
Maybe this is a dichotomy, maybe not. I'm just kind of thinking out loud here, and Heart isn't like powered by the apocalypse or anything like that specifically, but I feel like it's still in that, the way I see it, there's kind of 2 camps of games. There's the more traditional, D&D Pathfinder kind of game, when you are more so, the way I see it, more so, it's not like you're playing yourself, but you are more playing in this world and you have all this time. And then some games like this force you to be more of a writer than a player, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And to me, that is appealing, but I would imagine it's not really everyone's cup of tea to be, I feel it's inherently less immersive, whatever, immersion in TTRPGs is kind of a weird, it's its own can of worms, but I think it is. But I feel like specifically with Heart from the outset being like, here's how your character dies, you kind of have to like step back, and as opposed to like immersing yourself and be like, oh, I'm in this world, like what am I gonna do? It's more you are like, again, very much the table is the writer's room. Obviously there's room for chance and dice rolls and everything else. So I'm not saying like you are, uh, at the start of the session you already see the ends. Not quite what I mean, but like when you approach scenarios that you're kind of, did you feel that you were like, did you feel like players or did you feel like writers, I guess?
I think the kind of interesting second level to that is then being aware that, oh, I'm being recorded. I kind of need to make this somewhat worth listening to for like 7 people or something.
Yeah, none of us have ever, done this.
Yeah.
This is our all. Yeah, how did that feel? Like, I personally, I don't know if I'm crazy like that, but I forgot that the mics were on very soon. And to me, one of the reasons why I enjoy GMing a lot is because as someone with ADHD, it actually very few activities consume me, like use my brain to 100%. Like I can be really enjoying this movie, but part of my brain will be still, doing some other nonsense. And GMing is one of the few activities, because it is pretty intensive on the brain. There's a lot of things to keep track of, and there's all these. I really like that. It kind of lets me be in the moment more so than other things. And being recorded and knowing that this is actually, I can't just, or like whatever, like let's just scrap that, let's retcon that. I don't have that luxury. That's just this like extra little fire under my ass that makes me even more on, if that makes sense. So I enjoyed it a lot. In this, it's definitely pressure, but like it's good pressure to me.
I like performing for an audience. I'm not going to lie. Getting to do all the voices, getting to do all the shit. Yeah, that's fun.
There were times where I forgot the mic was there, but there were also definitely times where knowing that I was being recorded, and it tended to be times where it was like the spotlight's on just the one character, the spotlight's just on Mallet, and it's like, oh, I need to deliver for some reason. It's something I've had to think about beforehand, and then it's like, then I know that I'm suddenly very conscious of being recorded, and you mess up about 12 times on the delivery, and you're like, oh, how do I? Yeah.
Do you feel like did it get easier for you or not really? Very understandably, like the first few times when it's novel, but after recording 8 episodes and kind of seeing that, oh, it's not like you need to deliver this holy grail of, unattainable platonic idea of a scene, that sometimes just literally saying anything is kind of fine. Did it get easier, or would you say?
I think the lesson I learned was just that it works better if you're just improving, and even if it's not like perfect as if it were written down as a story, it's better in terms of the pod and the game if it's just like, and it's easier to do on the recording if you're just riffing off like other people and or off the situation rather than like.
And you can absolutely tell when something's been pre-written and or pre-arranged, and it just doesn't have the same energy to it.
Yeah.
There's this other great aspect to recording a podcast in that I know we're all here to record a podcast and play the same game.
Yes.
And I'm not going to push someone's buttons. I'm not going to make someone leave the table angrily because I've, in character, driven a dagger into their proverbial heart. So I had some freedom to really push buttons of other characters, and I think that helped some ways.
I think as players around this table as well, I think we're all very like agreed that like we are not our characters, and we're quite happy for there to be inter-character conflict. So I think that helps.
It does.
It is something that I think I went into the game thinking that I was going to explore more, but didn't end up doing it that much, mostly because I chickened out of it. Was Safina should have absolutely hated Neve and Sam. Absolutely hated them.
Yeah, well, like I said, I do think that she's a bad person.
Oh, yeah.
So what was the deal with the bees in the sane asylum?
Oh, yeah.
Specifically the bees in the mural, right?
Yeah, on the mural, because they had the same like markings as Safina's bees, but the Sane Asylum is specifically the most hearty place in all of the heart.
And the bees are the less.
They're like anti-heart. So yeah, well, what's the?
So I have an answer that I think is quote unquote canon in my head in terms of like the specific origins of the Sane Asylum. But I feel like that is a question.
Can I guess and see how close it was?
I'm not going to confirm or deny, but if you have a fan theory, I'm happy to keep a poker face as you tell it.
So my fan theory was, and we never found this out, but was that so the bee mural was there when the Sane Asylum was an insane asylum, and there were staff there working with people who were patients within the Sane Asylum. As the heart then began to take hold within that place, right? It was the origin of the heart, I believe, was what was said. And as that heart expanded and kind of took over, the staff themselves who were essentially fighting against the heart, the insane asylum medical staff.
That's so cool.
And so they became the bee people, not realizing that they themselves were actually transformed by the heart, because they became like the bees on the mural.
Interesting.
So they were actually heart all along, but they think they're not, and they're fighting against it.
That's cool.
I love the idea of the Apiarist having like a origin that close to the heart itself, but that being lost because like anything to do with the heart is heretical, so we can't be close to the heart.
Yeah, and the only thing left of them is that like drive to fight against the weirdness of the heart.
You would love Nier Automata.
What's this?
It's a game. It's got that sort of through line through it. It's great.
Good game.
It's a good game.
Neurotomata.
Nier Automata.
I really love that game because the character has a beautiful ass, and I love looking at that ass.
That is
That's
such a.
everything.
If I'm gonna look at a character, I might as well look at a girl's ass.
Yeah, the all the plot of it and all the stuff kind of went over my head.
So how close? What's the vague?
I like what you said, but I feel like this. I feel like in stories, you have. I think some questions should be just clear. Like again, Silas is autistic. This isn't, like very clearly, that's what's going on. But some are being left as poetry, and the little interpretation only enriches the answer. And I feel like this is that category when
But I think
Very
that's
true.
kind of like the process of TTRPGs, like in general, that we tend towards vagueness. We don't want to put like a concrete answer on stuff because then it's not as cool if it's not like an open question. But then combine that with like collaborative storytelling, and you've got storytelling coming from lots of different directions that feels like it's owned by different individuals around the table. Like you don't want to answer questions put forward by other people and left open, and you don't want to answer your own questions. So it means that everything just tends towards vagueness, and you really have to fight that urge.
Well, even like the characters we've got in the show, they're the canon characters now. We've all got backstory documents, I hope, somewhere. That is now a different character who ended up being.
Yeah.
Neve changed from her little half page of text into something that we all sort of collaborated on a little bit.
Yeah, true.
I don't actually agree with what you said, Charlie. I would push back a bit. I think I'll give you a specific example, a question that is a good one to have a concrete answer to. I recently was playing in like this. It was supposed to be a one-shot and ended up being a 4-shot. Very vague premises, a bunch of demons attack. But I wanted to know as a player, like, are these Christian demons from hell? Or are what is going on here? Because I feel like that would inform the way my character would act. Like
Sure.
maybe I want to play like a Christian fanatic who is wrong or is right, right? And like
yeah.
like that seemed to me like, and the GM he just refused to humor me there. And but it wasn't even like a mystery, it would be completely different if like, ooh, you play to find out. It wasn't that. It was just, no, I want to like leave it kind of open, which I had to respect, because unfortunately when I'm a player in different games, I have to listen to what the GM said. But personally, I'm still of the opinion that it would benefit my character, like my role playing, if that question was specifically answered, especially considering this wasn't supposed to be a mystery. And it, wasn't like this poetic, ooh, who knows, maybe the demons are us all along. Like, it was a very literal game in that sense. Like, Heart is kind of, at least in our interpretation, is like very dreamlike and like
Yeah.
surrealish. But this was a very like down to earth kind of game.
But then I'd challenge, does you as a player knowing a concrete answer to that question make as much of a difference as you deciding on an answer that your character believes?
I think so, because I don't mind. In fact, I think it's quite fun to play a character that is objectively wrong,
Yeah.
right? I enjoy dramatic irony and everything. And I can't enjoy dramatic irony if I don't know if it's dramatic irony. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, in character, I still played it like as somebody who just talks about Christ all the time, right? Because that's me in real life anyway. Like,
Well, yeah, we
as
talk
we
about
said, we always
reflections
play
of- yeah,
ourselves
yeah.
in games, and as you know, I'm
Yeah, that's a question. Has anyone else found it weird when Seema makes us pray before every recording?
Are we not meant to
Yeah.
do that?
right. But again, like I said, I can't enjoy dramatic irony if I don't know.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't really change that much for the character, but I feel like it would kind of change my relationship to the character and just being more informed.
I think in the instance that you brought up, I would completely disagree with you, and I would always be pro. Like,
As the person who edits these, there was never a point when I could edit to make myself look better, because it's not how it works. But in this specific scenario of us having wrong opinions, or different opinions, I definitely am going to edit an AI generated
should I just make it a bit
voice.
easier and say, like, Seema, I agree that with your
Exactly.
point.
I'm gonna edit out the don'ts, and
Yeah,
it will look like you've seen the light.
What did we think about Heart as a game? We touched on this a bit, but I'm interested in hearing what people think. Is it a good game? How many stars out of 10?
I really like Heart for the evocative player options. It was very
Yeah.
easy to get everyone to play this game, because do you want to be this fucking weird guy or this even weirder guy? But it's not just like, oh wow, this is crazy and wacky and like for novelty's sake. I thought they were really well thought out,
Yeah.
but also like, yeah, very evocative. And I really like mean that word. Like, you can just read these abilities and immediately get ideas of like,
Yeah. And I think for me, the highlight is the world. I think I love this idea of like a semi-organic dreamland. And I think, like you're saying about the characters, I think it brings you in all at the same level, and it brings you in all at the same, is tone the right word? The same kind of aesthetic, maybe? Like, it brings you into the same planet, and you don't have to kind of fight too hard to be cohesive. And the stuff that it presents you, like the levels of like detail in the world building that they've already put in, it's such a good jumping off point for like thinking up characters and thinking up ideas for like, because I think the Heart itself as a location becomes another character, and you are kind of like adding to that character as you add to your character, and I think that's really fun. System wise, I don't care about systems. I just play because I get to tell stories.
I would disagree. I think the system is probably one of my favorite aspects to it. Other than like, I feel like the setting and the vibe of it we really ran with, and we did a lot of stuff with. But I feel like as a system, it's super easy to get into and basically forget that it's there, which I think is the hallmark of a good system.
Yeah, we're not doing
like-
any maths.
No,
There was
Yeah.
no adding +4 to a roll ever. It was
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
now as a Pathfinder 2e enjoyer, I actually like adding +4s.
Look, +4 is easy. It's when you get to +7 People
Yeah.
get confused.
2d6 plus 1d4 plus this plus that. I'm not good at maths. I like it. I like it as
I'm
like
just,
a little exercise.
I just see a dichotomy forming. I don't like that dichotomy. I enjoy both.
True.
I-
Me too.
I agree a lot.
The thing I really like about Heart is that it makes failure fun as
Mm.
well.
Yeah, the Fallout mechanic is
Mm.
great.
Yeah. It really, like, the Fallout also, like, kind of drives the story a bit. And
I think, frankly, if your only experience, dear listener, is just listening to us, I don't think this was to detriment to our story or anything. But if I had any notes as a GM for myself specifically of Hearts, I definitely did not utilize the Fallout mechanic as much as I could. The only, I wouldn't say problem, but like the only thing with it, there's like 30 pages worth of different Fallouts to choose from. And when you're running a game, and especially when you're running a game that's being recorded, I wish I had time to, pause for 10 minutes and like look through all the options, because some
Yeah.
of the options are absolutely great. Like a lot of them, I think I tended to go with more simpler ones just to speed things along, like, oh, you're followed as you're bleeding or whatever, right? Or you're unconscious. And like those are fine. But a lot of the Hearts Fallouts are way more, again, evocative. Like it's just, oh, a stranger starts following you.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. But compared to other games which use a similar sort of Fallout trauma mechanic, stress and trauma is pretty common. But a lot of trauma is like you're afraid of cats. And it's like, that's not
Yeah.
how trauma develops. That's just not human. And it sort of makes fun of people who do have trauma and stuff like that. And Heart System, a weirdo follows you, it's removed from it. It's great. I love that, how it handles it.
There's also an aspect that we kind of ditched for this role,
I
for
was
this run.
thinking that, yeah.
Because in the book, there's a mechanic of beats, and it's kind of like player decided kind of story progression, and you kind of field them to your DM, and then once you achieve them, that leads you to get abilities and stuff. But I think we decided for this, it didn't really make sense for us all to be going off too much in our own direction, and it made more sense for us to be building things kind of collaboratively.
Yeah, that my take on it at the time, and I guess still was, that the beat mechanic is great. Heart is built like a dungeon crawler. It isn't built with an inherent story in mind. I mean, obviously, we did like a story in
Mhm.
mind, and like we very much followed a quote unquote plot,
Yeah.
even though we didn't really follow it. But you know what I mean? Like we already kind of had that narrative aspect covered.
Yeah.
But I think if you want some inspiration and like help with that, the beats are really good, because it's essentially, and again, brings you to very much so the writer's room kind of
Yeah.
state of mind when you're like, for my character, the next few sessions, I want to cover this beat. And this is also how you earn XP, by actually completing those things. But yeah, for a narrative kind of driven story podcast, if this was a 2-year campaign, then that would be, again, amazing. But we thought, for 8-hour episodes, with the idea of trimming out as much fat as you could,
Mhm.
this would be a little too many tangents.
Yeah. But if you're going to play it, it's a great thing, because I think it also formalizes chatting with the GM and coming up with a collaborative story outside of the game, that you can then be free just to kind of like be surprised by something you've already come up with in the game, which I think is really cool. It kind of allows that secret keeping between the player and the GM, where it's like, oh, I want this thing to happen as a player, but I want my character to be surprised by that event.
It
And I
also
think
sets
that's
up
so cool.
goals, which is like, if you ever tried playing a character with no goals, they just do nothing and they walk
Yeah.
about in circles and do nothing, and it's impossible.
Yeah.
And I think that's a major pitfall of a lot of people writing a character. They don't have a goal to work towards. Whereas Heart necessitates a goal. It's the only way you're going to progress, if you have set goals for your character.
Now that I think about it, for a podcast that calls itself Offbeat, us ditching the beat mechanic is kind of ironic.
Very meta.
Or is it just really on topic? We're not the On Beat podcast.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, we've talked a lot and everything, but we need to leave some time for audience questions. Now, you might say, but Seema, this podcast isn't out yet. We thought of releasing it like a Netflix kind of thing, so we could like binge the whole season. So how could we possibly have fan questions sent to our email, offbeatpod@yahoo.com?
Are you serious? We actually got an email.
Yeah. The first email that we got is from someone called JD Vance.
Oh my,
And
okay.
JD,
Okay.
and JD writes,
Call me gullible.
Hi, Offbeat Pod crew. Love the show, but if I'm really honest, not so much. The only one that I really love is Charlie. So I hope he stays forever because I really enjoy Charlie and frankly no one else. And if coming into the next season Charlie isn't there, I'm checking the fuck out. So Charlie, that's I guess, kind of a question for you. What would you say to JD Vance?
I've never been so happy to disappoint JD Vance. Yeah, sorry, bud. I'm moving. I'm not going to be part of this wonderful podcast anymore. But I'm super excited for everything that they carry on and go on to do.
Charlie is moving to Europe, and we will miss him.
Sad times.
Very.
Yeah.
But we're happy to. This is why we're like, oh, will we be able to record this podcast before you leaving? And that was like a whole thing. And I'm very happy that we decided to risk it and add you because you've been a crucial addition to this crew. But also it will be easier to record without you. Just one less track to keep when you're editing. I have another question from JD Vance actually.
God, he loves this question.
He loves, yeah. So JD Vance also says, right, sad to hear about Charlie.
That was a
Wow, are we
quick
bugged?
email.
Are we bugged?
Maybe. He says, very sad to hear about Charlie, but I will keep listening as long as you keep playing hard. And,
Okay.
And I guess now it's my turn to disappoint JD, because we kind of planned this podcast as a bit of a variety show, a bit of an anthology series. The plan that we have right now is to play something very, very different for our next season, which will be Mothership, which will be sci-fi, horror, and space. And then after that, we plan to play some Wildsea. And Aaron, if you wanna add another left hook to this variety thing.
Just to especially upset JD Vance, I will be DMing the Wildsea game.
Yeah. So we I will be GMing Mothership, but be prepared for all sorts of twists and turns in this space, and that's not to mention some one shots that we also plan to run in other systems, and again with maybe some other GMs, who knows. So yeah, a lot of big plans here, and yeah, we want to say, I guess, thanks to our only fan, JD Vance. Thanks for the support.
And if you are actually someone who's been listening and has listened to every 8+ episodes, thank you.
Send us an email at offbeatpod@yahoo.com. Do we actually have this?
Yeah, we do.
Fab. Send us an email there.
Is it Offbeat Podcast?
Offbeat Pod.
How do you sound so disappointed?
I think I sent my criticism to a